Hi, my name is Maggie Taylor, and I'm here today at the Lift Up Food Bank. Lift Up stands for Life's Interfaith Team Assisting in Preventing Unemployment and Poverty. Lift Up has been part of the Steamboat Springs community since 1996, and it was developed by the Ministerial Association here in Steamboat. Throughout its time in the community, it's consistently had a food bank, but also provides other assistance, including life skills and employment help and financial assistance to the community. It is one of the heartbeats of our community and provides some very essential needs to those who are experiencing food insecurity and other things. When we walked in today, I commented that, wow, these shelves are really full. I've been in other communities in which I've walked into food banks and it seems like the shelves are always empty. That's one of the amazing things about this community is its generosity and its ability to keep these shelves full for those that need it. We all are surrounded by neighbors who experience food insecurity, trouble paying their rent, trouble making it from day to day. And Lift Up is key in making sure that we can live together as a community and have the things that we need. You might say, Maggie, what are you doing at Lift Up? Yes, it was started as a part of the Ministerial Association, but what does that have anything to do with the message of Jesus? Did you know that there's only one miracle that's in every single gospel? All four include the feeding of the 5,000. And I think that's important. Jesus lifts up this time in which 5,000 people are fed as part of the story in which he walks along. And each gospel writer thought that that was important. Even John, who usually kind of goes his own way, does his own thing, tells his own stories. He even lifts up the feeding of the 5,000. And the story goes a little like this. There was a day in which Jesus was preaching and teaching, and when he was done, everyone was there and it was dinner time, and it says that there were about 5,000 men, not including the women and children who were there. And so those 5,000 men, the disciples came to him and said, what are we supposed to do with all of these people, all these multitudes, estimated around 100,000 people? What are we supposed to do with them? We should tell them to go home so that they can have dinner. And Jesus said, no, you give them something to eat. And different stories have different renditions of where these 7 loaves and 2 fishes came from, 5 loaves and 2 fish. They might have come from a little boy who shared his lunch, and they might have just been found. But wherever they came from, they were multiplied and fed all of the people who were gathered at that place. And there were even leftovers. There were multitudes of people and multitudes of food and still access to share, to have leftover at the end. Why do you think that Jesus includes this as part of his story? Tim and I are talking about the miracles of Jesus, and we've gone through a few different things, but this is the miracle of feeding people. As I said, it's the one miracle that is included in every gospel, even if it has a little bit of a different tinge. But feeding people is obviously part of Jesus's ministry, and it's part of the gospel. A lot of times this is construed as the emotional feeding of the people who were gathered there, but we know Jesus had already done that. He'd already preached and taught the good news. This feeding was a physical feeding of their bodies, a nourishment of their bodies to be able to travel, to be able to live into the gospel that Jesus had just preached. So what does that tell us today? Number one, I think it tells us that feeding people and taking care of their physical needs is critical to the message of the gospel. We can't just pray for someone or say, I wish you well, or I give you blessings, or bless your heart. We must provide them with the physical things they need to be able to survive. And one of those is food. But there's also shelter, that's also clean water, that's also clothing, that's also an ability to move throughout wherever they're living, transportation. So Jesus calls us, and the gospel writers recognize that this feeding is important and critical. And if we take this scripture and just make it about our souls, we're missing a huge part of it. We're missing the fact that this is part of the gospel, not only this. The second thing I would say that we see here is that we see that not only because these people were fed was their body nourished, but their soul was enriched as well. Think about the last time that you were hungry. Not, I haven't eaten in days hungry maybe, but I skipped lunch hungry, or I forgot to eat breakfast and grabbed a cup of coffee hungry. Are you good at concentrating? Are you good at focusing? Are you as productive as you normally would be? This is the experience of lots of people in this world. Lower levels of productivity, lower levels of being able to learn and comprehend. Food makes a huge difference in someone's ability and life and productivity and contribution to our world. So if Jesus had taught these people and then said, go find your own food, for which some of them it might have been impossible, do you think the gospel would have been absorbed in the same way? Jesus knew that physical and emotional and mental and soul all goes together. So as we make sure to take care of each other's soul, we must take care of the body, and it goes both ways. The third and last thing about this miracle is it is the miracle of the multitudes. We know that there are 5,000 plus people there. Who knows how many people were gathered at this place listening to Jesus at this moment? There were multitudes of people, and in that multitudes, they shared a meal. Many of the other miracles of Jesus, we see one person be healed or a family be transformed, but this is a miracle in which sharing is critical. This is a meal in which multiple people, multitudes of people shared an experience of Christ in one moment. And we are called to do that every day. I want you to think about the last meal you had. Who did you share it with, if anyone? Did you think about who produced and packaged and stocked the shelves in which allowed you to have that food on your table? If I were to pick up this bag of macaroni right now, I would see a list of ingredients, all which took multiple hands to create, multiple hands to craft, to put it even in my hands on my table in that pot of boiling water, which I probably won't let boil long enough. All of those are hands of children of God who are coming together to create a table in which we are able to share. Each meal that we have on a daily basis is a meal of the multitudes because it is the sharing and creation of all of God's children into one place. I would encourage you to share a meal with someone, maybe multiple people, maybe people you don't know really well or don't understand exactly the way you think you could. I would encourage you to engage in the true love language of the world, which is food, and see God in that. See the way that food transforms relationships. See the way that sitting down to a meal can open up lines of communication. See the way that in that meal you have the hands of all of God's different types of children present. Because we're not self-sustaining. We need other people who package and who shelve and who farm and who clean and who grow to create the experiences which allow us to see God's light in the world. Food is the one thing that I think transforms the most number of people. The thing that God has produced that allows us to sit down and have a common experience in which language doesn't matter, religion doesn't matter, status doesn't matter. We all need to be physically fed. So I invite you, share a meal. It can be as simple as pasta with some butter, salt and pepper, one of my favorites. But in that meal are multiple hands of God's children. And in the sharing and conversation is an enlightening to a multitude of miracles. Miracles of care, miracles of love, ways in which we continue to show and grow God's grace in the world. Amen.